So, if I leave my house to take a walk around my neighborhood for exercise, and my ultimate goal geographically is to be back at my house, when I take my first step, am I walking away from my house or toward my house? When I take my first step, am I walking away from my house? Yes. Am I walking toward my house? Yes. But someone who doesn't know what I'm doing, doesn't know what I'm thinking, would observe me and say, "Where is he going? Where is he walking to? What's his destination?" He says he's going to his house, but I see with my own eyes he's walking away from his house. He's leaving his house. So it is with the kingdom. So it is with the Spirit. So what's important? What's my goal in walking? My goal is to get exercise and to commune with Yahweh and clear my head and get some fresh air and make some space for creative expression to flow. It's not to be back at my house. If the goal was to be back at my house, I wouldn't bother to leave my house in the first place. So I want to ask you, are you living your life in such a way as to be pleasing and pacifying to what other people can see? By what can be observed by an outsider? Or are you willing to exist as a mystery, as an enigma, as an anomaly, walking in the peace of what you know internally? Because these are two very different things, yes? And people can only respond to what they see. They can't respond to what you know until you tell them what you know. And as we're probably aware, that doesn't always help because they're not always ready for what you know. Other people are not and cannot be the Holy Spirit to you. They can benefit from the Holy Spirit in you, but they cannot act as Holy Spirit to you. And sometimes you have to appear as though you are moving away from your destination, away from your destiny, away from your illogical intended target. I had a conversation with a man recently, and he was telling me about moving to Arizona from Mississippi. And he told me about how he knew he needed to connect with some people in Alabama about 45 minutes from where he was living in Mississippi. But he was only able to do so after living in Arizona. And an interesting thought popped into my head. And I said to him, "You needed to move 2,000 miles west in order to move 45 minutes east." Because he was actually further from Alabama, living in Mississippi, than he was living in Arizona. He was closer to Alabama being in Arizona than he was being in Mississippi. Not geographically, but in his soul, in his internal world, in his decision-making process. His infrastructure wasn't primed for what was in Alabama. It was primed for what was in Arizona. But the experiences in Arizona led him to return to make that connection in Alabama when the necessary pieces fell into place, when the fullness of time had come. And all of this, of course, can be a metaphor, because everything can be a metaphor. What did Christ say? The kingdom is like, the kingdom is like, the kingdom is like a mustard seed. The kingdom is like treasure hidden in a field. So let me ask you, what's your Mississippi? Where are you from? What mindsets have you been born into? And what's your Alabama? What's the dream? What's your promised land? Where do you know you belong? And maybe most importantly, what's your Arizona? In other words, where are you now? Do you feel stuck? Are you waiting on something? Do you think you don't have what it takes? Are you afraid of failure? Are you afraid of success? Maybe you don't understand why it's taking so long. But sometimes in the places that don't make sense, the in-between places, the places where we experience loss and frustration and anxiety, the embarrassing places, the places we don't want to admit we still need, that make us ready and willing and able to embrace the necessary changes we need so that we can go where we always knew we belonged. Remember, the Israelites wandered in the wilderness between Egypt and Canaan. Even Christ was tempted in the desert between being baptized and the Sermon on the Mount. So maybe, just maybe, you're in good company. I'm Ryan Coleman, the real Ryan Coleman on Instagram, not Ryan Coleman on X. I encourage you to read my new ebook. It's called Problems to Proverbs, Ancient Wisdom for the Modern World, Volume 2. I've turned my frustrations and struggles over the years into nuggets of wisdom, very similar to this podcast, easy to consume, but no less powerful, no less life-changing. I'll drop that link in the show notes. I'll give you $10 off. My gift to you. Merry Christmas. But that discount expires at the end of the year, so jump on it. I think it would make a great gift. Or treat yourself. Treat yourself to some wisdom. Unwrap some understanding. Splurge on some insight, especially if you like this podcast. And just a friendly reminder, the podcast is free. I'm just saying, if you benefit from it at all, if it's helped you at all, might be a good time to turn around and show some appreciation. But speaking of appreciation, I always appreciate you listening. So thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.